The sun beat down fiercely on the sprawling military base, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. Sergeant William Bill Carter stood tall, his boots planted firmly on the hot pavement as he stared ahead, his posture rigid. The heat was sweltering, but he didn't flinch. He was used to it by now. As one of the senior officers of the base, Bill had long since gotten comfortable with the rigid discipline of Army life, the unspoken hierarchy, and the power that came with his position. Bill Carter had always been known for his no-nonsense approach to leadership. He was the kind of officer who didn't hesitate to call out any soldier who didn't follow orders, and he had built a reputation on making sure that discipline was maintained at all costs. His reputation had earned him the respect of his peers, but it also created a few enemies along the way. Among those enemies was Lieutenant Colonel Jamal Green. It wasn't that Jamal was a bad officer. Far from it. He had always been highly regarded for his leadership, discipline, and tactical brilliance. But he was different in one glaring way. He was black. And in a world that was still deeply divided, Bill had never quite come to terms with the idea of a black officer being above him in rank. For years, Bill had quietly resented Jamal's rise through the ranks, even though he never showed it publicly. It wasn't that he doubted Jamal's abilities, he respected those. But the thought of a black man holding a position of higher authority, especially one that could eventually surpass his own, rankled Bill. And so, when the orders came down for Bill to report to the base for an inspection led by Jamal, he saw an opportunity to assert his dominance and remind everyone, including Jamal, of who really ran the show. Bill didn't care that the mission was important. He didn't care that Jamal had been promoted because of his own hard work and sacrifice. What mattered to Bill was the fact that, despite the world changing, he still saw himself as superior, and that superiority was going to show on that fateful day. The day of the inspection arrived, and Bill stood outside, arms crossed, waiting for the line of soldiers to march in. He scanned the horizon, waiting for the convoy to pull in. It wasn't long before he saw the unmistakable silhouette of Jamal's Jeep rounding the corner. The engine hummed as it pulled to a stop, kicking up a cloud of dust that swirled around the military vehicles. Jamal Green stepped out, his uniform sharp and pressed, his boots polished to perfection. His face was calm, the confident but composed demeanor that had earned him respect in the military world, now visible for all to see. The soldiers around Bill shifted uncomfortably, knowing that the presence of their superior officer demanded a level of reverence. But Bill didn't move to salute. He didn't even flinch. He was determined that today, he was going to make Jamal earn his respect. Jamal walked up to Bill, offering a firm handshake and a nod of acknowledgement. "Sergeant Carter," he said, his voice steady. "Colonel Green." Bill responded stiffly, his voice colder than usual. Jamal didn't react to the tension in the air. He was used to this, used to dealing with the subtle undercurrents of racism that lingered in the ranks. He had earned his position, but it seemed that there were still some in the military who couldn't quite accept it. The soldiers behind Bill and Jamal stood at attention, waiting for formalities to unfold. Bill, however, was deliberately holding back. He was trying to prove a point, to show that he didn't have to salute or show deference to Jamal, despite the man's rank. He was waiting for Jamal to take the first step, to acknowledge his authority. But Jamal remained calm, unbothered by the silent challenge that hung in the air. The tension between them grew palpable, but Jamal maintained his composure. He didn't want to escalate the situation any further, but he knew Bill was testing him, testing his position, his rank, his authority. So, instead of reacting angrily, he let the silence linger. He wouldn't lower himself to Bill's level. He let Bill make the first move. But then, Bill did something unexpected. He stood tall, his hands firmly by his sides, his jaw clenched, and his gaze unwavering. "I don't see the point in saluting you, Colonel," he said, his voice cold. "You're still the same man I used to serve under. Nothing's changed." The words hit Jamal like a slap to the face, but he didn't show it. He had worked hard to climb to his rank, and no matter how long it took, he knew he had earned every inch of it. But Bill's statement struck a nerve. Bill had never been someone to hide his biases. For a brief moment, Jamal's patience wore thin. The military had always been a place of respect and discipline, where orders and rank were paramount. But this wasn't about orders or discipline. It was about pride, about power, and about the refusal to acknowledge change. Jamal stood there for a moment, absorbing the insult. He could feel the eyes of the soldiers on him, some of them too afraid to make a sound, others unsure of how to react. Jamal could feel the weight of it all, the history, the racism, and the refusal to accept him for who he was and what he had achieved. But he also knew that he wasn't going to back down. He wasn't going to let Bill push him into a confrontation. Not today. With a deep breath, Jamal took a step forward, his eyes meeting Bill's. "Sergeant Carter," Jamal said, his voice low but filled with authority, "I understand that this is difficult for you. I understand that change doesn't always come easy. But I earned my rank, just like you earned yours." Bill's eyes narrowed. "You didn't earn it the way I did. You're here because of some diversity initiative." Jamal's expression hardened. He had heard these kind of comments before, but hearing them from Bill stung. "I earned my rank through years of service, years of sacrifice, and years of dedication. I didn't need a diversity initiative to get here, Sergeant. I worked for it just like you did." There was a long silence as Jamal's words sank in. For a moment, Bill seemed to retreat, his usual confidence shaken. He wasn't expecting this. He wasn't expecting Jamal to stand his ground so firmly. Jamal continued, his voice steady but fierce. "So, if you want to continue this challenge, Sergeant, I'll remind you that I outrank you, and I've worked damn hard to earn that respect, just like you did. But respect isn't something you can just take. It's something you have to give." The words hung in the air, and Bill knew there was no coming back from this. Jamal had just shown him the very thing he had been avoiding. The undeniable truth of his rank, his authority, and the respect he had earned. Jamal wasn't just an officer now. He was a symbol of progress, a living testament to the fact that the military, like the rest of the country, had changed. Bill stood silently for a moment, his pride forcing him to swallow the bitter truth. The soldiers around him remained silent, watching the exchange, waiting for the tension to break. Finally, Bill spoke, his voice quieter, but no less resolute. "Fine," he said, his eyes still hard. "You've made your point." Jamal nodded, his posture straightening. "No, Sergeant, this isn't just about making a point. It's about respect. And it's about time you learn to give it to everyone, no matter who they are or where they came from." With that, Jamal turned and walked away, his back straight, his head held high. The other soldiers, still at attention, exchanged glances but said nothing. They knew the battle had been fought, and they knew who had won. As Jamal walked away, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. This wasn't just about Bill or the military. It was about something bigger, the fight for respect, equality, and the unshakable belief that no matter who you are or where you come from, you have the right to stand tall and be seen. In the end, Jamal didn't just teach Bill a lesson. He reminded everyone in that yard, everyone in that military base, of the real meaning of respect and the importance of standing up for what is right, and that, he knew, was worth more than any rank or title. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.